and welcome today. We look forward to you joining us in this conversation around COVID-19. We know we're in that space, but this is about surviving and thriving, and why boards, why appointing non-executive directors to boards is still important. And I'm excited today to be introducing to you three professionals. We have Carl Bates, our CEO of Sadar. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
And then we have as well George Eady, CEO of Answer Series.
Hello.
And we've got Noel Otter of Power Fashion.
Hi, everybody.
And I think the important thing here is it's not about corporates. We're not talking about corporates. We're talking about privately held and family-owned firms. So I do want to share with you where we are at the moment. So, formal introduction: surviving and thriving, why appointing non-executive directors to your board just became key. Thank you, Carl, for hosting with me. And my name is Beverley Hancock, and I'm the head of Appoint for the Sadar Group. So we've been doing Navigating the Blizzard, a series of webinars. Why are these here? These webinars have the sole purpose of helping you to determine the next steps to take in your business, to think through the implications, impact of these steps, to take the decisions in a responsible but effective way, and to position yourselves to see these things through. So these are working webinars. Thank you for joining us, and we want you to ask questions. We want you to make comments. You know, we've got a question and answer section at the end of this webinar. We've got chat boxes. So let's together see how we navigate our way through this blizzard. It's been critical to maintain a clear head now and address the issues in the right way. I found an amazing quote that I loved, and that was, close scrutiny will show you that most crisis situations are opportunities to either advance or stay where you are. And these are the kind of decisions that we're all making now, where we sit. And that's how are the decisions you make today impacting your tomorrow, your next month, and the next year. So first of all, thank you very much to George and to Noel. If I can ask you, please, to give us some context ahead of the conversations. Tell us in 40-odd seconds about your business and when you formally established your boards. If I can start with you, George.
Sure, Beverley. So the Answer Series was founded in 1975. It's an educational publishing business supplying high school study guides to the South African market. And it was founded by Dave and Ann Eady, who are my parents. And it was last year that we implemented a board at the Answer Series for the first time to align with the founder, manager, owners, my parents, transitioning out of the business in all of those formal hats, roles, etc. So that's the context of our relationship with Sadar and boards and what we're busy doing. Hope that's under 40 seconds.
Perfect. No.
Hi, yes. Ours is a family business that's approximately 70 years old. My brother and I are the major shareholders. We bought the company from our father and uncle roughly about 13 years ago. And our sons have both joined in our fourth generation in our family business. We've got 150 retail stores and employ about 1,800 staff members. And we officially, by accident, met with Carl, and by accident actually got a board after a conversation with Carl. So yeah, so officially for the last 5 years we've had a board.
Thank you for that. Noel, if you can maybe just lean forward when you're talking with regards to that. That's fantastic. So it's great to hear that between both yourself and George and Noel, you know, you've got a board that's new, it's a year old, and Noel, you've had one for 5 years. So it's about understanding then the flow and the process and what is brought through that. And I think, you know, let's sort of take a step now and say, we're going to look at the next moves. And Carl, at this time of economic crisis and cultural change, it really is key for business to be looking at both short-term solutions and the long-term deliverables to achieve desired results. So what situations, or what are the situations that business leaders and decision makers, what are they finding themselves in now when it comes to their new boards or to appointing directors?
Thanks, Bev, and welcome everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to have a conversation with you. I know that there's a lot going on in the business world right now, and finding the time to invest in conversations about how to manage this can be difficult. But I think that's the key. I think in a crisis, you get so caught up with where you're standing right now. You get caught up looking at your feet, and you lose bigger perspective. And I suppose the best example, or the sort of best metaphor, is going mountain biking. I'm generally a bit of a risk taker when it comes to business and comes to doing things in business. And obviously, I suppose that's part of the DNA of being an entrepreneur. But when I first started going mountain biking, I went with a friend of mine and his wife. And she's a very well-known lawyer in South Africa. And when we'd go mountain biking, she'd end up way, way ahead of me, and I'd be tagging on behind, head down, looking right in front of the road, trying to find where I was going. And eventually one day she just stopped me and she said, "Carl, you need to sort this stuff out. When you're cycling on the mountain bike, don't look right in front of you. You need to look down the road, because if you're looking in front of you, you'll never ride smoothly and you'll fall off. If you keep your eyes looking down the road, you'll stay on the mountain bike." And I just think that's such a great metaphor for this journey that we're all going through right now in the world of COVID-19. I think it's really easy for us to get caught up in what's happening right now and lose that perspective. So we're having conversations with people that are saying things like, "I wish I had a board right now. I wish I'd done this sooner." Bev, I know you're in the process of appointing some directors to a couple of companies that are going, "Hold on a minute, like, you know, we can't do this now, but we wish we actually had our board." And that's the sort of discussion we're finding in business. And I suppose part of why you've come up with having this conversation today is to say there are ways of getting an interim solution to ensure that you can get some of the value that I'm sure Noel and Eddie are going to talk to.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And speaking of that, and I'm going to ask both George and Noel, if you don't mind, because this is important to so many of us listening and looking at where we're at. Pre-COVID-19, what value did you get from having a board? And the second part to that would be, please give us a tangible example or examples of how your board, your current board, has supported you during COVID-19. George, if you'd like to kick off.
George is on mute.
There you go. I've managed to commit the foul sin. Yeah, I think the main feature of having a board has been the sense of calm that the manager, owner, founders were afforded, in the knowledge that the business was in sound hands. It sounds like an obvious point, but it's a major point for entrepreneurs who run a business for 45 years to immediately arrive at a place of calm, knowing that the business was doing the right things, being responsible, being thorough, and that, I think, saved a lot of emotional energy and set us on a good trajectory. I think a couple of other things. One of them was, I don't know about other entrepreneurs out there, but my relationship with the word governance wasn't a positive one. It's, you know, governance is the rules and the authorities and yeah, bureaucracy, all those bad things. And I think the big swing has been to say, wow, actually this whole governance idea is amazing. It actually, again, frees up thinking and energy, because there's a lot of processes that are well trodden to support businesses not to make major blunders. And I think, yes, of course, we want to be hitting new markets and new products and all those kinds of things, but you don't want to be leaking own goals. So yeah, I think that's been a major sense of calm. And I think just to make a third point before handing over to Noel, and we can talk about some of the examples perhaps afterwards, but is to say having an accountability partner for the CEO, for myself. When, for instance, in COVID, instead of saying, sure, this is quite a big deal, I saw this newspaper article, we should do something. It had to be a board meeting, and there had to be a board pack, and we had to formalize our view, which then rippled right through the organization. So it just raised the standards of accountability on my part. And yeah, but we can go into more examples. Noel, why don't you share a few of your experiences?
Yeah. Again, for us, we come from a very entrepreneurial family. I was in a shop since I've been 5 years old. I was born basically in a shop, but playing in a shop since I was 5 years old, and a born trader, just bought and sold. And I think by a little bit of skill and a lot of luck, we managed to grow the business. And we also then, my father and uncle owned the business, and my famous thing that I'll never forget, my uncle said to me, always remember the golden rule. And his golden rule was the man with the gold makes the rules. So we didn't really have formal discussions and stuff, and we'd come up with ideas, and we'd have to go with what the flow was and what was happening. So having a board for us, so we then bought the company from our father and uncle. And both my brother and I were very focused on trading on the floor and being involved in the day-to-day running of the business. What had happened then was the shares, when we bought from our father and uncle, was bought in both my brother and myself's family trust. So there was one level of governance in terms of having trustees. But those trustees didn't have a clue on how to run the business. And I also had to look, if something had to happen to me tomorrow, how would my business survive, and how would it thrive, and how would it grow? And that's where getting a board has been absolutely invaluable on getting continuity. And I know for a fact that if something had to happen to me tomorrow, that the business can continue, because it's not going to be left to management just to make decisions on what they need to do, where they need to go. It'll be done by a board that has actually now been together for 5 years and have added a lot of value. In our board, it's also comprised of different people. We have we have a person who is in mergers and acquisitions and did a lot of private equity deals. So the way of thinking of finance has changed completely from where the dividend policy, we never had a dividend policy, we never had rules. The governance, I agree with George, the rules and the governance has actually been good. And then now there's a board pack that we get produced every single month. So it stopped it actually stopped. We used to have what we thought board meetings, but they were actually management meetings. And now we have outsiders who come in and bring different aspects we've got another board member who's very strong in the HR side, and so the other one is strong on the finance side. So it's given my team so much support that we know at any given time, it doesn't have to take a board meeting for me to get advice. I think George and anybody running their own business will possibly agree with me that it's very lonely at the top, and having to make decisions without having people to bounce ideas off. So my board has really supported me in terms of even holding people accountable, holding me accountable. They've tried hard and they're getting better and better with it. But yeah, and I think what I've really enjoyed about the board is because they're independent and they walk out afterwards, Carl and I call it robust discussion. It's about 3 decibels lower of like a screaming, shouting match. I'm just joking, but we have very robust discussions, which I think sometimes my management team would not have with me. So they've brought a very different level of conversation and lifted the level of what we speak about when we have a board meeting versus when we have a management meeting.
Awesome. Noel, you've been jumping out, and while you've been talking, a few other thoughts have come to mind. Should I share them now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one particular thing prior to COVID was that, yes, there are the board meetings, which offer these great milestones to prepare for, and allowing enough time for preparation, insight, execution, and having that kind of rhythm of things. But then there were the opportunities for interim decisions where there was sufficient ambiguity that often the decision would just be delayed if it weren't for being able to consult with someone external. And often they can just speed something on and provide a nudge in the right direction, or, yeah, obviously you've seen that 10 times before, go for it, you know? And that kind of value was pretty awesome. But then in COVID, what if you've got a good non-exec director who's sitting on perhaps, you know, a number of boards, they're having all of these conversations with different contexts at the same time. So that experience is invaluable. You know, for someone to be able to transfer in a matter of days some lived experience from other companies. So I think those are a couple of things that I just wanted to add to the mix. And one of the things that I sometimes have not always found to sort of strike a chord or put a lot of value on in terms of the CERTA offering, but I have to admit the thing about the contribution compass is real. So, you know, my response was, you know, innovate. I'm a catalyst profile and a sort of top right champion, whatever that one is. So my thing was innovate, respond, advance, and I was able to have that check-in conversation with my chairman to say, George, just a FYI, all that's great, except that just on the money front, the only thing that's important right now, don't worry about revenue, don't worry about profit, just worry about cash. And just getting those kinds of blind spots put into the mix quickly saved us a week or two of action on that front, which, you know, months or days at this stage in COVID. So those kinds of things have been of real value.
Yeah. So I can also share some things that I've learned from the board is on my board, we used to be 6 and we're now 7, and it works very well. And I'm very proud to say we also have a lady sitting on our board now, so we're making very good progress. And out of the 7, 4 of them are CAs. And yeah, it's been a learning curve for me, having to have somebody hold me back the whole time. And yeah, I like to shoot from the hip and trust my gut instinct. And I've been told more than once by the board, we don't like your gut instinct that much, put it with facts and figures. So I think, again, this morning on COVID-19, I think my brother, who also sits, we have 2 sides of our business. We have the clothing business, and then we also have 5 Spar supermarkets. And having my brother there today, just saying, guys, calm down, don't overreact, just take a step backwards. And I got that whole thing from my board, because I'm quite a fiery guy, and I like, God blessed me with abundant ADD, so I like everything to be done yesterday. And I've just really found we've had 5 since in the last 2.5 months. We've had 5 emergency board meetings. We have been able to jump on a Zoom call and have my whole board there, barring I think 1 meeting we had 1 person who couldn't make it, but having people to just bounce ideas off and what is the market, what's happening out in the market? Are we just overreacting? Are we not? This is what we're thinking, and just putting some slow down, think about it, and letting the responses be a lot more, I think, professional and thought through than I would have been in the past.
Absolutely, some really powerful comment coming out of that, and how and you know, you're entrepreneurial, you're driving businesses, you're decision makers, and it is about having that balance as well. And I think, Carl, that's something, you know, I'd like you to pick up on as we move along, because I think having listened to George and to Noel, what in your opinion is an effective board, or the effectiveness of a board in the midst of all this happening in order to stabilize a business?
So I really liked what George said just before, and I know Noel and I have often had this back and forward, that at the end of the day, the words like governance and all of this get quite scary. The bottom line around effectiveness for a board, or what we would call a high performance board, I always boil it down to, if your board told you to do something that right now you knew you wouldn't like them saying to you, would you listen to them? And if you would, you've got what I would call an effective board, because while it would be something that you would be uncomfortable about, you would listen and engage. And I think that means that you've got people that you respect, you've got people that collectively you would carry their opinion and that you would follow. And I'm not saying that, for example, in my relationship with Noel, everything that I say he needs to agree with. What I'm saying is the collective of the people sitting around the table, if they are people that collectively he would go, if they say this, I'm gonna really, you know, that's what it's gonna be, then he's got what I would call an effective board. And I think to anyone listening to this afternoon, or when we download it or make it available to download later, if you're thinking about who's around you right now, think about, have you got 3 or 4 key people sitting around you or available to you to pull onto a call or into a meeting that would act as a board, or are your board if you don't have one, if you have one. And when you're challenged by what COVID means for your business, and you say to them, look, here's what I'm thinking, and they give you an answer, will you listen to them? And if you will, then you've got the foundation of what can be a very high performance board. But I don't know if that answers the question you're asking.
No, absolutely, and thank you very much for that. George, Noel, any further comment on that?
On what a high performance board means for them, is that,
Yeah, I think for me personally, where I think a high performance board has come in, is that there doesn't always necessarily have to be everybody agreeing on the same thing. And I think Carl's got a word for it, and he calls it devil's advocate. Somebody's got to be out there asking the difficult questions and the what if this happens and what if that happens. Have you thought about this? And sometimes if you run a management meeting versus a board meeting, the people are sometimes too scared to say something. I don't know. I'm not a difficult CEO, I believe, but I believe as I said, Carl and I have had very robust discussions, and with some of the other board members as well, and the honesty and being able to afterwards go and actually unpack what is it that we need to do. And nothing ever gets solved 100% in a board meeting. There's a lot of discussion, there's minutes that come out, but the fact that you can go back, and I repeat again, being an entrepreneur, it's lonely at the top, and people look up to you and they expect answers to their questions. And sometimes you're sitting there yourself, you don't know exactly what is going on either. And being able to slow down and just say, guys, we'll get back to you, and have an off-the-line discussion with a board member, not the whole board, with one of your directors who's maybe an expert there, or who's been giving great input during the meetings, and thrash that out. As a CEO, I think I always tell people when they ask me a board, I say to them, the board is your friend. Take the board as your friend. If you see the board as a threat, you're in the wrong, then you shouldn't have a board. The board is your friend, and the board is there to help you. The board is there to assist you, and the board is there to make better decisions for you and your company.
I just want to add on to that, if you don't mind, Bev, in terms of 2 things Noel said. One is the relationship between the board and the chief executive, and in the context of the relationship between Noel and I as chairman and chief executive, I think your chair should be your biggest advocate, but also your biggest critic. And if you've got that sort of relationship with the chair of your board, then you're going to get real value from the relationship. I always say that your chair should never be surprised by anything you put on the table, but also should never cross or catch you across the knuckles in front of the board either. So there's a relationship, and I'd be interested, George, in a moment on your comments around the relationship between you and your chair. The other comment I want to speak specifically about COVID-19, and it'll be no surprise that Power Fashion obviously is a retailer, so has been having a conversation like anyone in retail is having at the moment about what do you pay when it comes to paying rent. And I'm not going to share the specifics of obviously the conversation we've been having as a board, but the comment that I will make that I think is fine to make in a public arena is it's interesting sometimes when as the board you raise something with management and you get a response that is no, that's not going to happen. And then you allow that to, I use the word cogitate, and for management and for the chief executive to think about it. And you see a week later or a couple of days later, a shift in thinking as a result of the conversation that's happened around the boardroom table. And I think often the role of the board is to be that conscience of the business, speaking into, in this case, the chief executive and the management team. But George, I'd love your comment on your relationship with your chair, before I think Bev might want us to move along.
No?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that as well. And I will go back to my understanding of high performance board, because for those out there who don't have a board or are unhappy with the nature of the board for certain reasons, this message might land for you. So we've only been running a board for almost 6 months. My perception of the board prior was one where you had these clever people who roll in and pass comment on how things should be. Where in actual fact, there is a very strong legal foundation for what's happening in that environment, such that if that director is well trained and knows and lives the practices of a director that is well informed, what you find is that they have a legal obligation to provide response, provide commentary, and to be thorough, which ups the whole quality of the engagement in that environment. So for me, the whole idea of people sort of stereotypically sort of drinking whiskey and cigars and passing comments, like that's totally a misperception. I thought is something worth highlighting. Yeah, and then following on to that, my relationship with the chairman is exactly what you've described, Carl. He really wants me to succeed in my role. And I want to make sure that that the consequence of our board meetings is clarity and calm, both in the board and then ultimately in the business. So if I'm not doing my job to help him feel prepared, and likewise, that's going to ripple into the meeting and then into the business and ongoing. So yeah.
Thanks, George.
I think that, sorry, I just want to make a comment there, George. That's a huge win if you can get clarity and calm in your business. I'll just run slightly differently.
And I think, a lot of this speaks to, when we're talking about a high performing board, it's about a board that is also balanced. Because if you have 7 people in a boardroom all shouting ideas, you're not going to get the same outcome as if you're sitting in a room where there are those that are going to question you, as George has said. There are those going to have robust discussion with you, as Noel and Carl have mentioned. So it really is about making sure, whether you're in a formal board or if you're surrounding yourself by those that are going to advise you, that you are covered in terms of there are people that are going to have a different opinion to you and a different energy, bringing a different energy.
Bev, just as a point there, what I'll do is I will put in the chat box for everyone a link where you can actually download a free ebook from our website on exactly what George was talking about. So I'll send that out in the chat, so everyone, if you're interested in it, you can grab it off our website.
Absolutely, absolutely, because I mean, it just keeps coming through as well, and really about how it's made a difference. And I think so for, moving on from the conversation we've been having now, what advice, and I'm going to put this out to George and Noel, is what advice would you have or give someone who at this point in time is keen to bring in a non-executive director, start a board, or bring in a business rescue team to support them specifically during this crisis, and actually then moving on with the long term in mind?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So I was invited to offer a referral letter to my experience of working with Cedar just recently. And one of the things I reflected on was the consequence of working with Cedar was two things that happened. One, we got a high quality of shortlist candidates for our non-executive directors, of 5 candidates, of which we chose 2. So the quality was high. But more importantly, it happened within a period of, I think, 5 weeks from when we kicked off the search for a non-executive director and from when we had decided who our non-exec and our chairman would be. Now, in the context of recruitment, that's really tricky because an independent non-executive director is by nature someone you don't know, that doesn't know you. So you don't have the conventional shortcuts of trust and relationship on your side. So my advice would be to find a method that you can shortcut the trust problem, like working with Cedar or some other clever way. And then what you can then do is achieve getting a non-executive director that is genuinely independent. What will be tricky to find, other than through Cedar, is the high quality of candidates because of the list of directors that Cedar have, and the sort of ready access to them. So I'm doing a bit of a punt here for Cedar, but I think it's completely appropriate given
Thanks,
that
George.
we have that. Yeah, no, but just that the thing you have to do right now, if you want to have a board, is you have to get it right, and you have to do it quickly. So you're in a corner. You have to use Cedar.
You're on mute. Paul, you're on mute.
Sorry. Just speak to that quickly, George, because I think you've made a really interesting point in terms of the need to do it now if you don't have a board. And I think Bev's recognized this, like getting the right directors is a process, as you say, and doesn't happen overnight. And I really like what her and her team's response has been in essentially saying, if you're serious about appointing a board, there's a limit to the number of times we can do this. But what we've done is put in place essentially senior partners from the Cedar Group as an interim board, if you like, for businesses that are going through this COVID challenge, but can see the light at the other side of the tunnel. And then at the appropriate time, we'll manage it through properly and find the right directors for that client. So I think there are ways in the middle of COVID-19 we can manage this. But I think what you're speaking about in terms of the importance of the processes is really on point.
Yeah, thank you for that. No, I can see you from the home office.
I just have to apologize. I heard my sound is very bad, so I'm just trying to make do with what I've got at home to improve it. Has the sound improved at all, or not really?
Much better.
Much better.
Okay. I'm back.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Noel. So one of the questions, and George was looking at this, as was Carl, was what advice would you give to someone who wants to bring in, or thinking about, in this crisis we're in, is about bringing on a board. Is it wise to bring on a board? Is it a good idea to be adding on non-executives? Is it a good idea to be bringing in, a business rescue team that's not going to just be for the now? Because ultimately what you want is people that are focused on the business and that are going to take you into the future.
Yes. Is this better if I speak like this?
No.
Okay.
That's better when you come in.
Is that better? Okay, sorry about this, guys. Yes. We have had slightly a different approach to our directors. I met Carl 3 o'clock in the morning in Melbourne after too many drinks, and he gave me his business card, and I gave him my card. I said, if you ever come to Durban, come for a coffee or something, and that's how we met. So, and that coffee sort of then went on to Carl becoming our chairman. The second director was somebody that we were aware of and knew, and we actually, Carl went through the stuff, and we appointed that, and then my brother was an obvious appointment as a non-executive. He's a shareholder as well. And then the last director we've appointed was also somebody that I had a conversation with, and I just suddenly had this feeling that this person can add huge value. And I actually phoned Carl immediately, and I said, Carl, I want you to consider this, because I've just had a conversation with somebody, and I've looked at their background, and I've looked at how they can interact with the team and add value, and we agreed to that. So ours was slightly in a different way. And I think also, the trust issue, I totally agree with you, George, it's so important. And, where we are now is we've had some meetings where I've spoken to the board afterwards, or board members have phoned me and said, Noel, you know what? I don't think that was the greatest meeting, and the way you came across, I don't think was the best way. You could have done it differently. And as I say, we've had some really, really great meetings and not so great meetings. But I think the most important thing has been the feedback. If we've had a shit meeting, then the guys would come back to me and say, well, 90% is because of maybe how I reacted or how I came across. But at least that it's in place, that there's enough trust and enough things that the non-executive directors know that they can criticize me. I'm a human, I make mistakes. And for us, it's been fantastic that people can actually phone me and say, that wasn't a great meeting, or I think the way you handled that wasn't the best. So actually getting online or ongoing coaching as a CEO. And a CEO for me is not a natural thing. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a leader, but I'm not into the detail. I battle with detail, and I battle with meetings, and I've only done one PowerPoint presentation in my life before. But, and I said to Carl, I'll tell you the true story of how the business is going. I won't do the presentation, but I'll talk. And then I'm very, very fortunate and very lucky that I've got a very strong COO who runs the business basically. And I basically have a very different setup because I've connected my COO and my CFO, and between the two of them, they've got guys reporting into them. So, it's not a one size fits all. You've got to work with what works for you. We're entrepreneurs, we're different animals. We're not corporate. So you've got to find a balance of what is working for you, what's going to work for you. And it doesn't happen overnight. It took a while for the guys to learn me and my personality and how passionate I am about my business and what I want to do and what I don't want to do and how I want to put things together. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And can I ask you, both of you, George and Noel, you're both very driven, family businesses, privately held, entrepreneurs. It's been a stream. It's often scary to start looking at a board because you feel you're giving away something. How long did it take you to actually go between the I'm thinking of having a board to I'm taking the decision? Because the outcomes just seem so powerful. I'd be interested to know how long it took you to get there.
As I said, God blessed me with abundant ADD. So from when I met Carl, it was probably 4 to 6 months and we had a board. So we had a lot of discussion, and I had to basically convince my trustees that that's what I want and that's what I think is the best way to take this business forward. And thank God they did see that there is value. And now looking back 5 years later, it was the best decision I've made in my life.
And yeah, maybe Noel, if I could, thanks, George. I just wanted to share on Noel's side that as a result of that process, his brother's business, which he referred to earlier being the spa business, has now gone down and undertaken the same process. So it's interesting to see how, what Noel's saying is not just an opinion that he's sharing, but something that as a family, they've actually seen the value to the extent that they've gone and added it to the other business in the family group as well. Sorry, George.
Sure. Yeah, in our case, it took I can't even remember the time, maybe just 3 months. But the important part of it was that whether my parents liked to admit it or not, they were very accustomed to making all the decisions. And on top of that, and a lot of entrepreneurs will probably relate to this, is that they were quite anti-MBA style thinking. Business only, return on investment only style thinking. And they were worried that a board would sort of suck the life out of the business or override the spirit in which the business was led. And I think I came at it saying, all right, I think we should have a board. I mean, my task was to help the succession of the family business. I'd done enough reading around boards to know that there was this thing called boards and that they were useful. But even I had my questions, but it was when I really got into their shoes to understand what it was like to have that ultimate decision-making power and really run this thing as an expression of themselves. That I did get to that point. I was thinking, yeah, actually, boards would be really annoying. I wouldn't like to have to account to a board. And kind of coming at it from this point of view, I then challenged Tim from that, you know, and that really helped because then Tim was able to respond. Tim Holmes is one of the CERDAR directors. He was able to say things like, the board's not going to suck the life out of a business by any means, number one. Number two, ultimately, 100% shareholder does retain the voting power of the directors. So if things really go, you know, not according to their preference, they have the right to change the board or withdraw certain directors or etc. This is in service of their vision, etc., etc. So once we named what the sort of reservations were, we were able to just tackle them one by one. And then, yeah, when that moment came where we just decided, okay, this is it. And definitely what helped with all of that was the high quality of candidates. You know, so once you meet someone, you're like, yeah, I'd feel comfortable with that person being on our board. Everything starts to fall into place.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
If I can add something, sorry, if I may add something to what George was saying there as well, where we got a lot of value from our board was, and George, I'm going to see as you grow into the process, because it doesn't happen overnight. 6 months is quite quick. So you're going to see as the process grows, our board was very, very helpful for us in terms of having an outsider help us to actually put our values and facilitating people to get the company values out there to the staff, and having people to bounce. I'd like a set of values on my desk for 10 years, which I moved from one side to the other. And it was only after a meeting, probably about 6 years ago, that we really went a strategy meeting with the board, and we then set the values. And I'll give you one example. We have a strong, ours is a Christian-based business run on family principles. And one of our non-executive members picked up that there was sales of online gambling going through our cellular shop. And he said, but guys, this is not what we stand for. The very next day, that was removed. And that was from a non-executive director saying, guys, but your values are one thing and you're doing something else. So that's the power of non-executive directors in terms of just maintaining your values, identifying your stakeholders properly, and how you engage with those stakeholders.
Absolutely, because a non-executive director is there for one reason only, and that is to see your business succeed sustainably, succeed and grow. They have no other ulterior motives. And Carl, I mean, we've spoken a lot around non-executive directors and boards. Anything that you would want to expand on in terms of opportunities and challenges around the timing of appointments?
Yeah, Bev, I think there's a lot that's going on in the world right now, and a lot of people are going, what is it that we do next? And there's always a reason why now is not the right time to appoint a board. And we deal with a lot of people who over the years have similar to George's comments before, got reasons why now's not the right time to appoint a board. And I suppose in the middle of COVID-19, it's really easy to go, hey, but there's this massive reason why we shouldn't do this right now. But I think COVID-19 just reinforces exactly why you should be doing it right now. And I'd love George and Noel to comment on this specifically as well. Like my view on this is, yes, we might need to do it differently. And yes, we might need to take cognizance of where your business is at. You know, we've got directors that are available who are willing just to put in the time and effort for businesses that are under stress right now, just to support them through this, this phase without necessarily a director's fee or an expectation at this point, because there is a willingness to support business given what's going on in the world. And we're seeing a lot of that through one of the, or a number of the initiatives this got involved in across the continent around supporting business and supporting economies and economic impact during this time. So my challenge to you, if you're listening and going, you know, should I be doing this right now, or I'm going to do this after we get through this time, is use this opportunity to prove the value of a board in your business. Because, you know, frankly, if having a couple of people to rely on right now, to have those conversations with, to create that accountability, to turn around with key questions like, what are the assumptions you're making? You know, because at the moment, it's all about what are the assumptions you're basing your business case on. And if you don't get value from those discussions right now, well, then maybe there's a different conversation longer term around whether or not you need a board. But don't use the inverted commas excuse. And often in the STAR world, we use the comment, insert excuse. Don't use COVID-19 as the excuse around why this isn't relevant for you right now. And sorry, I just to take that one step further, if COVID-19 is the reason and you're saying our business is failing, no one would want to be a director, I suppose the only other alternative is you are talking to a business rescue practitioner. So if you really want to put the black and white of it in front of you, you're either talking to a business rescue practitioner because your business is so affected that you're not going to have one after COVID-19, or you're talking to people who are going to support you through this and ultimately become your board.
Absolutely. It's where do you want to be at the end of the day? Any
Exactly.
comments around that, George, or no?
Yeah, I suppose I'll share that that you know, difficult decisions are in front of us. Probably for the majority of businesses, this next month is big. You know, most businesses have enough working capital to absorb a month or two, maybe 3 months of operations, but beyond that, not so much. And so, yeah, I guess it's just one of those things where not only do you want to have good advice, but you want to have high standards of almost legal accountability and how you navigating this space and this time. So yeah, that would be my one comment.
Absolutely. And any questions? I mean, we're really open to questions. Any comments you'd like to make? Any concerns you have in terms of the business that you want to pose to us?
You're asking the attendees there, Bev. Just if anyone wants to ask a question or seek insight from our panelists, just put a comment in the chat box and we're happy to take those questions. Absolutely.
I think it's important, you know, you can listen, you can hear, and sometimes questions come up, and it's about posing it now. You know, you've got 4 people here that can assist you with that. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to also contact us afterwards. Please feel free to do that. I'm actually just going to share something now to take us to that question answer session. And I just wanted to make comment here. And I'm a Simon Sinek fan, I've got to say. And he's got the primary ingredient for progress is optimism. The unwavering belief that something can be better drives the human race forward. And I think that's very eloquent for today. He is the optimist. He doesn't believe in positivity. Optimism is not naive. It's about accepting the truth of reality. and looking forward to a brighter future. And I think that's where we all need to be in order to move forward and move out of this blizzard and through this blizzard. So, any comments?
Just can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Much better. Okay. Sorry, guys. I've come right at the end with my family is like scrambling around finding earphones and a mic. Sorry about that. And I just want to say that for those who has got any questions, and if I was very unclear, Beverley will put my cell phone number out there, and I'm happy to take any calls and have a one-on-one call. As I said, I've been in this project, been busy with this project now for 5 years, and I know that yes, it was nice to have the board there. Pre-COVID, for the last 5 years, we've probably grown in excess of 25-30% a year. And post-COVID, it's easy to make things happen and when things are going well. But now the challenges are, and I'm very, very comfortable that I've got 4 non-executive directors behind me that is going to help me to rebuild my business, because what we saw 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and what we're going to see, I've told my management team, forget about the past. That's gone and finished. We have to focus on the future because it's going to be a whole new ball game. The rules that existed before is no longer applicable. How are we going to be taking things forward? How are we going to be doing things? My brother has a saying, and he says, with high growth, hides a lot of inefficiency, and we are having to look at every single process and is it adding value, and how are we going to do that. And as I said, I'm happy to take any call. I've been extremely happy. I don't think we would have got to where we are today in the last 5 years if it wasn't for Carl and Siddhar and my non-executive directors, which has added a huge value. And I said again, we were having our strat session, and our strat session is 2 or 3 days that we go away. We bring in the management team for a day or two to get their ideas. And then for the next 2 days, it's only the board that actually now define what is our targets going to be, and stretch those targets and help us with that. And guys, the thing of having people from the outside looking in to your business, and people who's got the right intentions, and people who want to see you grow and be successful, I believe is the only way. If you reach a certain size and you want to grow and go forward, your banks are going to look a lot more favorably about it. If you've got proper board meetings, proper board minutes, if you want to sell your business one day, the seller is going to say, well, this is a business that's run professionally. It had a board. It's just the advantages are so much, and the information and the backup and support that we've received. For me, it's a no-brainer.
Lovely.
Well,
Thank you very much. George.
There's one thing I'll add at this point, which is that one of the misperceptions I had was that directors or non-executive directors are expensive. And they don't necessarily need to be, or not necessarily is the case. A lot of directors are fulfilling the directorship role because of a certain passion for a particular industry or a certain purpose they hold. And often it comes hand in hand with giving back. They've had entrepreneurial experiences, they've been there, done that, and now they're kind of reaching their hand out to help further entrepreneurs. And so, you know, our business was probably on the cusp of the affordability spectrum when it came to having board members. But as it turns out, it's really been much more accessible than I previously had imagined. And so that might just be something to jog people's thoughts that might have a misperception around that.
That's a very, very good point. Thank you for that, George, as well. And we've had a question, thank you. All right, how big is my business? How big is my business before I need to consider a board? Is it turnover or number of employees? Who would like to go with that? Carl, potentially? Or?
So my comment would be, it's not so much about your revenue or your number of employees or size per se. Both Noel and George's businesses are very different in context, size, industry, etc. For me, it's about where do you want to go? And I often talk about this idea of the difference between craftsmanship and entrepreneurship. And the idea is that if your business is essentially a lifestyle and it's about funding your lifestyle, you've got a small clientele and you have no ambition for growth, then a board might not be appropriate for that journey. But if you're looking to grow a business, if you're looking to dominate an industry, if you're looking to take something new to the market, etc., then a board is a critical part of that journey. And I always use the metaphor, and Bev had the picture of Simon Sinek with the mountain in the background just up there before. I always use the metaphor of climbing a mountain. You don't climb the mountain and then get to the top and then put on your climbing boots. You put your climbing boots on the moment you decide to climb. And in fact, you walk them in before you even hop on the mountain. And I think a board of directors, in my view, is exactly the same.
If I may add to that, my view with getting a board, or my view still in our business that we run, is that I tell the people, if you're coming to work here, or if you are working here and you're thinking you're going to be working in the biggest company, you're wrong place. My intention is to be the best in the given field that I am, and to give back to the communities that we serve. So the size and staff numbers and turnovers are only numbers. It's how you feel within yourself of how you want to grow yourself. Because you can sit there by yourself and make all these decisions, or you can have some experts who guide you, and you become a better business person, and you'll end up walking away with a stronger, better business.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really some powerful comment, some intelligent conversation, and I just want to thank Carl, Noel, George for adding such value to this conversation. I want to end off and thank everyone. We've literally running to the max here, so it's been a great conversation. This is just to let you know we've got an online workshop, by the way, around COVID-19. If you want to contact us about that, please feel free to. We want to thank you for taking the time to join us online. In today's world, it's really important to understand where we need to go and what we need to do. There is a survey that's going to appear on your screen after the webinar is closed. We'd appreciate if you could actually take time to do that. And we just want to say thank you. So thank you, George. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Carl, for joining us today.
Sorry, one last piece of advice from my side is Carl has been wanting me to watch these webinars for, I don't know, the last 5 years. And the other day I did my first one, and I've realized what a big mistake I've made. Guys, these things are free. Look at them, the value you can get from them. I got my whole management team to look at the one about business rescue. And suddenly the guys were thinking on a different level because of the steps and because of just the reality of what could happen and what couldn't happen. And suddenly they looked at it and said, okay, now we understand. So I would encourage everybody to those webinars to actually listen to them, watch them. There's great value that you guys can get from that.
Thanks so much, Noel.
And for those, would be on the website, sadagroup.com. So thank you very much for that. All right, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Look after yourselves. We look forward to further conversations.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Cheers. Good night.
Cheers.
Bye.